So now we are having this second session. This applause was quite shy, you know? Yeah. For the next one, I'm going to really ask for your help. This transition is into, okay, like you hear Valencia, come to Valencia, great ecosystem. What can we learn from the other hubs, right? This idea of going international, like being able to build companies from everywhere, this, ideal that we have in the startup world that we can build a company from Valencia and it can be a leader, globally. How does it confront to reality? And we took two, I think, very interesting profiles to join this conversation. We have Carolina. So Carolina is working at SoftBank investment fund, and you are looking at Series B, C's plus investment, and you have your perspective about this. Can you just quickly say what is SoftBank, what you are looking for at SoftBank?
Sure. So SoftBank Vision Fund is a $100 billion fund. The mission behind the fund is to invest in the advancement of technology that will transform the way people live. So from a sector perspective, it's a pretty broad mandate. It's truly global, so I think we'll get to the point of hubs, but there is no pre-allocation as to how much money has to go into any geo. It's just about investing in the best teams with the most game-changing technology.
Thank you. And you, Jose Iglesias, you are Director EMEA.
Yes, the whole EMEA.
You can show your badge, it's I love it. So Jose is Director EMEA. That's it. If you need something in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, you just go to him. But as your jacket shows, you work at Techstars. Tell us quickly, what are you doing there and what you're looking into the startup ecosystem?
Yes, so Techstars is the worldwide network that helps entrepreneurs succeed. We do that through different approaches. We're known for our accelerators, so we operate now 52 accelerators globally. So this year, we're going to invest in 500 plus companies through the programs, and that's pretty early stage compared to SoftBank, right? So we invest anywhere from 100K to 3 million plus follow-on. So that's on the accelerator side, and then we work with large corporations also, helping them with their innovation and working with startups, and we also work with different ecosystems worldwide, right? So we run Startup Week and Startup Week, which are both active here in Valencia. So through that, we operate in 130 countries plus per year, which means that we have that insight to different ecosystems.
From your perspective, because you're going to all these different hubs, and particularly in the area you cover is very broad, is it real that innovation can happen anywhere? And what is kind of the biggest hurdle or challenge that you see? And you do this very quick, so we can also ask the rest.
Yeah, so we are massive believers that you can just build a great company anywhere, right? And we see that, and I think that's the thing that changed the most in the last 20 years in investment, in tech investment, is the fact that 20 years ago, you have your tech company, you need money, you go to San Francisco, right? Like now, we need to go where great founders are, right? So we need to travel a lot, and we all travel a lot to find those great founders. So I think that's something that has changed. Like you can build a great company from anywhere. At some point, you're going to need to move to, or like at least travel a lot. But you can do it anywhere, and I think Valencia is a great example of that, actually.
Thank you. Carolina, same for you. Like you were telling me yesterday that actually you are here in Europe to find those gems, and that it's hard to find them. Like this is like super, I found it fascinating because we would assume, oh, you have so much money that people will just fly to you, but actually it's not the case. And you have something to say about the fact that European founders don't take the phone that often. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think that U.S. and China, for instance, are much deeper markets, right? And I think that Americans, especially, and this is a generalization, they'll always take a call. They're happy to just chat. And I think European founders sometimes say, well, okay, well, what do you have to add to me? And I think the way that you approach European market isn't like it's Europe, right? You have to go to the different cities, you have to go to the different hubs, you have to nurture these relationships, which can often seem like more work than doing it in China and the US. But I agree. I think great companies can come from anywhere. I think what Europe still has as a bottleneck, though, is pools of talent in certain areas, and then also pools of capital, particularly when you get at the growth stage. So it's not unusual that at a certain stage companies will move to places where there is a lot of capital and or more talent.
And any interesting trends or industry that you're focusing on that you think are interesting for your particular area of investment?
Yeah, I think we're really focused on how technology enablers are transforming sectors. So we're really focused on things like AI and machine learning, data, and how those are being used to transform particularly sectors that are yet undisrupted. So if people are familiar with some of the SoftBank investments, mobility is a big part of the thesis. It's very core to how people live in that transformation. And that's really been revolutionized by trends like autonomous, sharing, connected, financial services is another area, healthcare, so all these really old school sectors that today are being transformed by tech enablers.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you guys from Valencia, do the founders or the people take the phone here?
I guess the question is about probably even the ambition of scaling out from Valencia. Yeah, I think so. I think it's something that is changing, but I would say it's not a problem about Valencia, but about Spain.
Yeah. We were talking about it earlier.
We were discussing this earlier. The problem here in Spain that we have a market which is 45 million people, which is big enough to create a good business, but not really a global business. And the thing is that what we're trying to push is to convince people, to entice people to push it further. Because in the end, you can't be a successful global champion if you don't move out of Spain, not only from Valencia. So what we're trying to do is to create the best place to create the company, to scale it until a certain point, which you will have to go to another place, and it's fine, it's good for the city, because probably what will happen in the city is what is happening with companies like Flywire, like Blimfire, which in the end, they have scaled their businesses to Boston, to the US and several other places, but the tech teams, the whole teams are here. And it's good because here we have lots of talent, but probably it's not the best place to have your business side here.
And from the Valencia city, what are other hubs that you're looking as inspiration, or you really like what they're doing? You try to maybe get.
We are now, for example, at the Valencia Tech City, we are working on a strategic plan, and we are like a benchmarking with the different ones. Yeah. So also the Nordics are they're doing a good work, and we can try to learn. But we are trying to try to find our own way, looking the best thing that we can see, like for example in Barcelona, also in Spain, Paris or Berlin, the great hubs. But also we are trying to look the hubs similar to us, like could be like Torino, Lyon, etc. The tier 2, that they're doing great things, and that maybe we can share that best practices to growth. So we are not a capital. We don't have that some ingredients that they have to growth, but we have a different ingredients that we have to use. Maybe we can try to learn from people like us or cities like us to grow.
And I want to get into this sort of transition into the next panel that is coming about this sort of, the role of governments, etc. From this bigger picture point of view, you were telling me, Carolina, that Europe for SoftBank is like only 7%. So like Europe, at your perspective, is like a small hub.
Well, it's 7% of our investments today, right? So I think SoftBank's really under-indexed on Europe, and that's something that everyone's very focused on changing. So we're really trying to find more companies in Europe to invest in. So please, any great companies, come talk to me. But yeah, it's something we're actively trying to change.
Do you think you have an impact as a VC of that size on how regulations are done in Europe?
So I think regulation can be a great moat, right? It can be a great barrier to entry. So I think starting early, what we've seen is if you start early, the conversation with the regulator, pushing agendas that you want to push, and be as collaborative as possible and focused on that early on. You may think, I'm at Series A, Series B, why will I have, an employee just fully devoted to this? Well, if it's important for your business and if it can create a moat, then, you should do it. because being part of that conversation is much better than being surprised by whatever outcome comes later.
Especially in those fields that you mentioned, like mobility or fintech.
Absolutely.
Or health. I'd like to ask also, Jose, from your perspective, like, do governments come to you and ask you for help? Or like hubs and cities?
Yes.
All the time? They're
It's
like,
growing quite a bit because, so as I was saying, like through programs like Startup Weekend and like we've operate globally, and ultimately what's behind of those programs, and similar in the cities where we have an accelerator, is trying to build an ecosystem, right? Like the community around it. So we've been doing that informally for the last 10 years or so, working with some governments, and we are kind of formalizing that now.
Okay.
So one of our co-founders, Brad Feld, wrote a book years ago called Startup Communities about how to build an ecosystem in your city, and we're working in the 2.0 version of that now and bringing more structure, but all the time, right? And it's tough from their perspective, and we get it, that it's not easy, right? But it happens all the time, and I think it's shifting. One interesting thing that we're seeing now is that you were saying we don't want to be Silicon Valley, right? So I think that's changing. Now, at least what we're getting is we want to be bolder, right? Which is, again, like every city is different, and you cannot, it doesn't exist a guide to build your ecosystem. Like Boulder has its things, and other ecosystems are the things. So you have to find your voice, as Javier was saying.
I was going to ask all of you, if you were telling this crowd about a smaller hub that they should visit, not Valencia, which one would it be? Like a very intriguing, place with a lot of great entrepreneurs.
Tallinn.
Anywhere. Where?
Galicia? No. Tallinn.
Tallinn.
Yep.
Estonia. Okay.
Yep. I think is the in terms of density compared to population, it's our top hub in terms of number of. We have, I think, 15 portfolio companies in Tallinn.
Interesting.
Which is a lot.
You, Javier?
That was exactly my pick.
Okay. Too bad.
Let's get back to Spain.
Yes.
I would say that Bilbao, it's a really nice hub that has managed to find their own voice, because they are really focused on Industry 4.0, and they're trying to raise from the ranks the companies from that sector.
Thank you. Carolina.
I'll say Munich.
Munich?
I think Berlin gets a lot of attention, but there's a lot of really interesting things happening in Munich, especially on deep tech, robotics, and so on.
Great. And for you?
Valencia,
Come on.
Really? Really? So we are more working like this is like Lyon or Torino, so maybe I would say Lyon because it's.
I was born in Lyon, so that's a nice way to end this. I would like just to give them a very warm, applause. Thank you so much for being with us today. You'll be around a little bit more, so you can, go and talk to them. Thank you.